The alien kid's skull cracked against the metal floor as the Zorgon bullies shoved him down again, his books scattering. Will Porter clenched his fists as he watched the cruel scene play out in the busy Galactic Academy hallway. Hundreds of tentacled, scaled, and furry alien students streamed past, averting their eyes from the blatant bullying. But 16-year-old Will was human, and humans didn't tolerate this shit. It was just another day at the prestigious interstellar school on Epsilon Prime space station. Shy Arcturian student Pryler sat slumped against the wall now, as the massive Zorgons towered over him, mocking his accent. Their leader, Grak, kicked Pryler's fallen books, sending them skidding across the floor. No one intervened. No one dared cross the Zorgons, the most aggressively dominant species at the academy. Their bullying ran rampant, ignored by students and faculty alike. But humans were different. Humans defended the downtrodden. And when Will Porter locked eyes with a bruised, pleading Pryler, he knew he had to act, even if it meant making an enemy of Grak and his gang, even if it meant risking his own neck to stand up for what was right. Will shoved his way through the indifferent crowd. There was no going back now. This ended today. Will's heart raced as he stepped between Pryler and the Zorgon bullies. Grak's eyes narrowed, his scaly face twisting into a sneer. "Stay out of this, human," Grak growled, "unless you want a beating too." Will stood his ground, fists clenched at his sides. "Leave him alone, Grak. Pick on someone your own size." Grak let out a harsh, barking laugh. "Like you, runt?" The Zorgon threw a meaty fist at Will's face, expecting to lay him out cold with one blow. But Will was ready. He ducked underneath Grak's wild swing and pivoted, driving a kick hard into the bully's gut. "Oof!" Grak stumbled back, clutching his stomach, eyes wide with shock and rage. The other Zorgons froze, stunned to see their leader staggered. Will didn't waste the momentary advantage. "Pryler, run!" He hauled the Arcturian boy to his feet and shoved him forward. Pryler stumbled, then broke into a sprint down the hallway. Will was right on his heels as angry Zorgon shouts erupted behind them. Alien students scattered as Will and Pryler charged past, the furious Zorgon gang thundering after them. Will's lungs burned as he ran, dodging around startled clusters of tentacled Xylothians and furry Bolgans. "Help!" Pryler cried out as they passed an open classroom door. Inside, a dozen Arcturian students watched with wide eyes. "Please help us." One of the Arcturians started forward, but another grabbed his arm, holding him back. The door slammed shut. Just like that, Pryler's own kind turned their backs. Will's heart sank even as his anger surged. "This way!" Will spotted a narrow maintenance corridor and veered toward it, Pryler close behind. They squeezed inside just as Grak and his goons thundered past, shouting threats. In the dimness of the corridor, the two boys slumped against the wall, chests heaving as they caught their breath. Pryler's face was bruised, his small frame shaking. Will put a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, you're going to be okay, Pryler, and I won't let them hurt you anymore." "You don't understand," Pryler said miserably, his voice quivering. "The Zorgon, they've been targeting me for weeks. No one ever tries to stop them, not even my own people." Will frowned. "What do you mean? Why wouldn't the Arcturians help you?" Pryler shook his head. "Arcturians avoid conflict. We always seek peace with other races, even if it means sacrificing our own. That's why no one intervenes with the Zorgons. They don't want to make waves." Will stared at him, appalled. Maintaining galactic peace was one thing, but turning a blind eye while one of your own was abused and harassed? Unacceptable. "That's bullshit," Will said flatly. "You deserve to feel safe, Pryler. And if the Arcturians won't step up, then I will. I promise. We're going to put a stop to Grak and his goons, one way or another." Pryler looked up at him, eyes shining with unshed tears and tentative hope. "You mean it? You'll help me stand up to them?" "Damn right I will," Will said fiercely. "Whatever it takes, that's what humans do. We defend the defenseless, and as of now, you're under my protection." The Arcturian boy managed a small, grateful smile. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of real hope. With Will the human on his side, maybe he could finally fight back against his tormentors. Will and Prylar emerged from the maintenance corridor, hearts still racing from their narrow escape. The Zorgon's angry shouts had faded behind them as they made their way into the bustling central atrium of Galactic Academy. Alien students of countless species milled about, chatting and studying at the scattered tables and benches. Will scanned the crowd, hoping to spot a friendly face. His eyes landed on a cluster of human students gathered around a hollow table, engrossed in animated discussion. He recognized a few of his classmates: Max, the whiz-kid engineer; Ethan, the charismatic debate team captain; and Lena, the star athlete. "Come on," Will said to Prylar, putting a reassuring hand on the Arcturian boy's shoulder. "Let's go talk to my friends. They'll help us figure this out." As they approached the table, Ethan glanced up and grinned. "Hey, Will, what's up, man?" His smile faltered as he noticed Prylar's bruised face and Will's grim expression. "Whoa, what happened to you guys?" "Grak and his goons," Will said, anger simmering in his voice. "They were beating up on Prylar here. We barely got away." Lena's eyes flashed with outrage. "Those Zorgon assholes, not again! They can't keep getting away with this bullying bullshit." Will nodded. "Apparently it's been going on for weeks. Prylar's own people won't even help him because they're so scared of pissing off the Zorgons." "That's messed up," Max said, shaking his head. "We gotta do something about this." Ethan leaned forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "Okay, let's think. We need evidence of the Zorgon's shitty behavior if we're going to make a case to the administration." Max perked up. "I could try hacking into the school's security cams. If we can get footage of Grak and his crew harassing people, they won't be able to deny it." Lena grinned fiercely. "Now we're talking. And once we have proof, we organize a protest, get the whole school involved, let everyone see what the Zorgons have been up to. The faculty will have to take action then." As the group threw out ideas, Will noticed a tentative tap on his shoulder. He turned to see a meek-looking Kelpian student hovering nearby, his fin-like ears drooping anxiously. "Excuse me," the Kelpian said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I couldn't help overhearing. I'm Varu. The Zorgons have been bullying me too. I want to help." Prylar's eyes widened. "Really? You'd speak out against them?" Varu nodded, straightening his posture. "I'm tired of being afraid. If you're going to expose them, I can try to get other victims to come forward too. There's power in numbers, right?" Will clapped Varu on the back, a grin spreading across his face. "Hell yeah, man, welcome aboard. The more people we have on our side, the better our chances." As Varu joined the group at the table, the gears in Will's head started turning. With Max's tech skills, Lena's influence, Ethan's leadership, and the testimonies of multiple bullying victims, they might actually have a shot at this. "All right, guys," Will said, leaning in conspiratorially. "Let's go over the plan one more time. Max, you work on getting that security footage. Ethan, Lena, start spreading the word about the protest. Varu, Prylar, see how many other students you can get to come forward about the Zorgon's bullying. We'll reconvene tomorrow to put all the pieces together." The group nodded solemnly, determination and righteous anger burning in their eyes. Will felt a swell of hope in his chest. They came from all corners of the galaxy, from vastly different cultures and backgrounds, but in this moment they were united. Together they'd take on the bullies and fight for a better galactic academy, one where every student could feel safe and valued, regardless of their species. It wouldn't be easy, but with his new allies by his side, Will knew they could make a real difference. The game was on. The Zorgon's reign of terror ended now. Will's heart raced as he watched the holoscreen flicker to life, the damning footage of Grek and his goons tormenting Prylar playing out in vivid detail. Max had come through, hacking into the school's surveillance system and compiling a montage of the Zorgon's worst offenses. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd of protesters gathered in the atrium, a sea of outraged faces from a dozen different species. "This has to stop," Ethan declared, his voice ringing out over the din. "We can't let the Zorgons keep terrorizing our fellow students. It's time for the administration to take action." Cheers erupted from the protesters, signs waving in the air. "End the bullying now! Expel the Zorgons! Justice for Prylar! Will stood at the front of the crowd, Prylar at his side. The Arcturian boy's bruises had faded, but the haunted look in his eyes remained. Varu and a handful of other bullying victims flanked them, their presence a testament to the pervasive nature of the problem. As the chants grew louder, a hush suddenly fell over the atrium. Will turned to see Grak and his Zorgon crew pushing their way through the crowd, their faces twisted with rage. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you, human?" Grak snarled, jabbing a finger at Will. "You think you can embarrass us like this? You'll pay for this." Will stood his ground even as fear coiled in his gut. "It's over, Grak. Everyone knows what you've done. You can't hide anymore." Grak let out a roar of fury and lunged forward, his fists raised. Will braced himself for the impact, but it never came. Instead, a sickening crack echoed through the atrium as Grak's blow connected with Prylar's skull. The Arcturian boy crumpled to the ground, blood pooling beneath his head. "Prylar!" Will dropped to his knees beside his friend, cradling his limp form. Rage and anguish surged through him, hot tears stinging his eyes. He looked up at Grak, hatred etched into every line of his face. "You monster!" Will launched himself at the Zorgon, all thoughts of peace forgotten. He pummeled Grak with a flurry of punches, pouring all his grief and anger into each blow. Around them, chaos erupted as the protesters surged forward, grappling with the other Zorgons. Shouts and cries filled the air, the once peaceful demonstration devolving into a brawl. "Enough!" A booming voice cut through the mayhem. Will looked up to see the school's security personnel flooding into the atrium, stun batons at the ready. They quickly subdued the Zorgons, snapping restraints around their wrists. Medics rushed to Prylar's side, carefully loading him onto a stretcher. Will watched helplessly as they carried his friend away, the weight of his failure crushing his chest. In the days that followed, the administration launched a full investigation into the bullying incidents. Grak and his gang were expelled, their academic records permanently marred. New anti-bullying policies were put into place, promising harsher punishments for future offenders. But for Will it was little comfort. He sat at Prylar's bedside in the medical bay, watching the steady rise and fall of his friend's chest. The doctors said the damage was severe, that Prylar would need to return to his home planet for extensive treatment. "I'm so sorry," Will whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I should have done more. I should have stopped them sooner." Prylar's eyes fluttered open, a weak smile tugging at his lips. "You did everything you could, Will. You stood up for me when no one else would. That means more than you know." Will squeezed Prylar's hand, a lump forming in his throat. "I won't let this happen to anyone else, I promise." And he meant it. In the weeks that followed, Will threw himself into advocacy work, starting a support group for bullied students and working with the administration to create a more inclusive environment. He spoke out against discrimination at every opportunity, urging his fellow students to stand up for one another. But even as positive changes swept through the academy, Will couldn't shake the guilt that gnawed at him. He replayed that fateful day in the atrium over and over in his mind, wondering what he could have done differently. He thought of Prylar, bravely enduring painful rehab on a distant planet. He thought of all the other victims who had suffered in silence, too afraid to speak out. Will clenched his fists, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. He would keep fighting no matter what, for Prylar, for Varu, for every student who had ever felt powerless in the face of cruelty. This was only the beginning. Will would make sure of it. Will's heart sank as he read the message from Prylar, his eyes welling up with tears. The words on the screen blurred together, but the painful truth was clear. Prylar's injuries were permanent, and he wouldn't be coming back to Galactic Academy. Even worse, the trauma of the bullying had left him struggling with crippling anxiety and depression. "Fuck," Will whispered, his voice cracking. He slumped back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. After everything they'd been through, after all the progress they'd made, it wasn't enough. He hadn't been able to protect his friend when it mattered most. He thought of Prylar, alone and suffering on his home planet. The image was too much to bear. Will knew what he had to do. He marched into the dean's office, his jaw set with determination. "I need to take a leave of absence," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Pryler needs me. I have to be there for him." The Dean, a wise old Vulcan with understanding eyes, simply nodded. "Of course, Mr. Porter. Take the time you need. We'll ensure your studies are not adversely affected." Will blinked, surprised by the easy acquiescence. He'd expected more resistance. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate it." He turned to leave, but the Dean's voice stopped him. "Mr. Porter, what you're doing for your friend is admirable. You embody the best of what Galactic Academy stands for." Will managed a small smile, his throat tight with emotion. "I'm just trying to do what's right, sir." He packed his bags in a daze, his mind already light years away on Arcturia. He sent a quick message to his classmates, letting them know he'd be gone for a while. Their responses were immediate and supportive, filled with promises to hold down the fort in his absence. The journey to Pryler's home planet was a blur. Will barely registered the wonders of interstellar travel, his thoughts consumed with worry for his friend. When he finally arrived at Pryler's home, he was shocked by what he found. The once vibrant Arcturian boy was a shell of his former self, confined to a hover chair and dependent on a dizzying array of medical devices. His family, their faces lined with exhaustion and worry, welcomed Will with tired smiles. "Thank you for coming," Pryler's mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "It means so much to Pryler to have you here." Will swallowed hard, his eyes stinging. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I should have done more. I should have stopped this from happening." Pryler's father shook his head. "You did everything you could, Will. None of this is your fault." But as Will learned more about Pryler's situation, his guilt only grew. The costs of Pryler's medical treatment were astronomical, and his family was drowning in debt. The Arcturian government, despite being fully aware of the circumstances, had offered little in the way of support or resources. Will felt a surge of anger and frustration. How could they abandon one of their own like this? After everything Pryler had been through, didn't he deserve better? He knew he couldn't stand by and do nothing. Not again. He fired off a series of messages to his friends back at Galactic Academy, pouring out the details of Pryler's plight. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, Max had set up a secure fundraising platform, and Lena was rallying the athletic teams to donate. Ethan was penning impassioned speeches, urging the student body to come together for one of their own. Varu, his voice shaking with emotion, recorded a powerful video testimony about his own experiences with bullying and the importance of supporting victims. The video went viral, spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. As the fundraiser gained traction, Will felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could make a real difference for Pryler and his family. But it wasn't just about the money. The galactic media picked up on the story, and suddenly Will and Pryler were at the center of a much larger conversation. Pundits and politicians were debating the issues of bullying, discrimination, and the need for greater interspecies cooperation. Will found himself thrust into the spotlight, invited to speak at conferences and events across the galaxy. He was hailed as a champion for the downtrodden, a voice for those who had been silenced by fear and prejudice. It was overwhelming, and at times Will felt like an imposter. Who was he to be speaking on behalf of so many? But then he'd look at Pryler, see the glimmer of pride and hope in his friend's eyes, and he knew he had to keep going. Despite the outpouring of support, Pryler's recovery was a long and grueling process. There were good days and bad days, moments of progress and setbacks. Will felt torn between his responsibilities at Galactic Academy and his desire to be there for his friend. In the end, the choice was clear. He applied to transfer to a school on Arcturia, determined to see Pryler through this journey. It meant leaving behind everything he'd known, but Will knew it was the right thing to do. And so on a warm Arcturian evening, Will and Pryler found themselves sitting side by side, watching the sun dip below the horizon. They were both changed, marked by the scars of their experiences. But there was a quiet strength between them now. "We've still got a long way to go," Pryler said softly. his hand resting on the controls of his hoverchair. "But with you here, I feel like maybe we can do this." Will reached out, gripping his friend's shoulder. "We're in this together, Pryler, no matter what, and we're not alone anymore." They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of their shared history settling around them like a blanket. In the distance, the first stars were beginning to appear, tiny pinpricks of light against the darkening sky. "I've been thinking," Will said eventually, his voice thoughtful, "about everything that's happened and everything that's still to come. And I have an idea." Pryler turned to him, his eyebrows raised in question. "What kind of idea?" "An organization," Will said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "A network of support for people like us, for anyone who's ever been bullied or discriminated against. A way to promote understanding and empathy across species, to make sure no one ever has to feel alone again." Pryler's face broke into a wide grin, the first real smile Will had seen from him in months. "That's brilliant, Will. Let's do it. Let's make it happen." And there under the Arcturian stars, the seeds of something new and hopeful were planted. Will and Pryler knew their fight was far from over, but now they had a purpose, a mission. Together, with the help of their friends and allies, they would work to create a galaxy where no one would have to suffer as they had. It was a daunting task, but as Will looked at Pryler, he felt a surge of determination. They had each other, and they had a growing network of support. They would face the challenges ahead, the same way they'd faced everything else, together, one step at a time. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the stars shone brighter, a celestial reminder of the vast and wondrous galaxy they were a part of. Will and Pryler sat in the gathering darkness, their voices low and earnest as they discussed plans and possibilities. They were two small beings in an infinite universe, but in that moment they felt anything but insignificant. They were survivors, fighters, dreamers. They were the spark of change, the hope for a better tomorrow. And they were just getting started. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.